ISHRAE cooperates with various national and international bodies, industry, governments, academia, to promote the concept of sustainability, environmental protection, and energy efficiency and conservation to enter and explore the universe of the Indian HVACR industry. Log on to ishray.in that unfolds a panorama of information. Let us engineer a sustainable future together through ISHRAE.
Hello,
Yes, sir.
shall I start?
Sure, sir. You can start now.
Okay, sorry for delay. Uh,
Oh, that's fine, sir.
Hello, good evening to everybody. Welcome for the today's technical session for an overview of thermal power plant and flue gas desulfurization technology. So now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Is it visible to all of you? Hello,
Yes, sir, it is visible.
is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible,
Okay.
sir.
So the topic is thermal power plant and flue gas desulfurization technology. Under this, we will discuss uh, the following under this introduction about the thermal power plant, major system in the thermal power plant, then broad classification of the thermal power plant and station heat rate, calculation of thermal power station efficiency, then calculation for coal consumption, then calculation for steam requirement for 1 megawatt power generation, then specific water consumption, then pollution control technologies, and the flue gas desulfurization system. Okay. In the meantime, if you have any queries, you can write in the chat box, and in between the session, I will follow what try to answer the query. Okay. So now the question is, what is the thermal power plant? Basically, thermal power plant is a plant where the electricity is generated by utilizing the thermal energy. Like uh, we are using in thermal power plant coal, biomass, biodiesel, this type of fuel. That fuel is used uh, in the boiler or steam generator, which the steam generator generates the steam, and that is utilized for the electricity generation. I would like to discuss brief about the thermal power plant block diagram. It is more clear. This is the block diagram. Here it can be seen that the fuel is fired into the steam generator, also called boiler, and in the boiler the steam is generated, and that steam is passed through the turbine. This is the symbol of turbine because generally the steam is at high temperature and pressure is passed through the turbine. So in the turbine, basically the steam is expansion takes place. That's why the symbol is like that. And the turbine is coupled with the generator, and due to the electromagnetic induction effect, the generator generates the electricity. And after expanding in the turbine, steam in the turbine, that is goes to the condenser, where it is the steam which is saturated steam, that is further cooled and collected in the hot well in the form of water, and that water is again pumped to the deaerator. Here it is deaerator, and from deaerator this is again pumped to the steam generator through boiler feed pump, that is called BFC. So this is the complete water and steam cycle, and here it is the cooling water. The purpose of cooling water is to cool the condensate in the condenser. This is the cold water coming from the cooling tower basin, and after cooling, the hot water is go to the again cooling tower. So this type of cooling tower configuration is called the natural cooling tower. There is different type of cooling towers also, like the induced draft cooling tower and forced draft cooling tower. So in bigger thermal power station, normally uh, natural cooling tower type of design is preferred. This is the normally in cooling tower, the evaporation is lost, evaporation losses is there, and the cooling water blow down. So the makeup water which is going to feed to the cooling tower, that is equals to evaporation plus blow down. And one more thing, the important thing is that in the steam generator, the fuel's combustion takes place. So the during the combustion, flue gas is generated, and that flue gas is passed discharged through the stack via electrostatic precipitator. The purpose of electrostatic precipitator is to collect the uh, dust particles in the flue gas, because it is harmful for the health and environment. That's why the electrostatic precipitator is installed in between the stack and the steam generator. Now, generally, this thermal power plant is work based on the Rankine cycle. So this cycle I have already discussed about this boiler and the feed pump, all these things. Here, one important thing in the Rankine cycle is that is either the top point. This is called the critical point. That critical point is pertaining to 221 kg per meter square and 374 degrees centigrade. That is called the critical point. If our steam generator or boiler is operating in this below this zone, below this zone, then it is called subcritical boiler or subcritical technology, whatever you can say. If this is operating beyond this range, then it is called supercritical. So there is normally two types of technology as of now. One is called the supercritical, that is the latest technology, and subcritical, that is conventional technology. So in this Rankine cycle, this is the boiler zone here. Basically, in the boiler, the water is in the tube, and combustion takes place in between the furnace. So when heat exchange takes place, that water is start steam formation in this zone. If you see here, the here complete water is there, and here the water is converted to the complete steam, and beyond this the superheat zone starts. So the superheated steam is passed through the turbine. This is called the, this portion is the turbine zone. You can also be seen from this left side of the diagram. This is the turbine zone 3 to 4. And after that, this is the condenser zone. Here the condensate takes place by the cooling water, and then again it is pumped to the boiler. This is the complete cycle. Then major equipment system of the thermal power plant. Basically, in thermal power plant, The categorization is in two parts. One is the main plant and other is the balance of plant. Main plant, under the main plant, we deal the boiler and turbine parts, and the rest of the system which are utilized for the running of the complete power station or power plant, that is called the balance of plant, like coal handling plant, or you can say if you are we are not using coal or another fuel, then that fuel handling plant. Then fuel oil handling plant, fuel oil. Normally in thermal power stations, fuel oil is also required during the startup. That is why the fuel oil handling plant is there. Then raw water handling plant, the raw water for the water circuit like cooling water, and the DM plant, that raw water handling plant is envisaged. Then DM plant in boiler main circuit where the steam is steam, and for the steam in purpose, the DM plant, DM water is used. Normal water is not used because of the lot of contamination and scale formation takes place if we use the normal water. So normal water is not used, DM water is used. Then hydrogen plant. Plant is used basically for higher capacity thermal power station for the cooling of generator, air cooling of generator. Then cooling tower. Then ash handling plant. The ash handling plant is associated with the handling of ash generated in the boiler or steam generator. There is two types of ash normally in the boiler generator. One is called the bottom ash and another is called the fly ash. Then chimney, stack, discharging of the flue gas generated in the boiler. Then civil and structural package, then electrical and control and instrumentation system, fire protection system. These are the broad facilities are there in any of the thermal power plants. Then boiler technology are classified in major two categories, like PC-fired boiler and CFBC boiler technology. PC-fired boiler is called the pulverized coal-fired boiler, and CFBC is circulating fluidized boiler combustion technology. See, this PC-fired boiler is the conventional technology, and coal fluid size is into the boiler is 20 to 30 micrometer size, and the pulverizer means mill is required for milling the coal. The operating temperature is relatively high as compared to CFBC boiler. Here, the operating temperature goes up to 1200 1300 degrees centigrade. But in case of CFBC, it is below or in the range of 1000 degrees centigrade. And in the PC-fired boiler, the high SOx and NOx generation takes place, and high capacity. The advantage of this technology, high capacity is available in the market, but CFBC technology maximum of 250 megawatt is right now is available in India. Here, due to this coal handling and milling purpose, the rotating parts are more as compared to CFBC technology. In this, if we compare the ash, so here in PC-fired 20% bottom ash and 80% fly ash. However, in CFBC 40 to 50% bottom ash and 50 to 55% fly ash. One more, the important thing of the CFBC boiler technology is the relatively new technology. Also, it is flexible for the fuel firing. Like in PC-fired, we are using coal in pulverized form. But in case of CFBC, we can use coal and other fuels like rice husk, biomass, and other type of fuels that can be fired. This is a typical scheme of PC-fired boiler, PC-fired thermal power station. You can see here, this is the pulverizer, what I have discussed. This is the pulverizer, that is coal mill from bunker. The coal is fed to the pulverizer, and the pulverizer coal is mild, and it is fired to the boiler. This is the boiler where the combustion takes place, and after the combustion, the flue gas generated is processed through this path. This is the in the boiler. This is called the first pass, and this is called the second pass. From the second pass, it is further through the air heater, and it goes to the precipitator, that is called electrostatic precipitator, and from the electrostatic precipitator, it is finally discharged to the stack. Uh, in the second pass, you can see here, this is the economizer. These coils are called the superheater coils, basically for generating the steam superheated, and that steam generated is passed through the turbine, what and for the power generation. And the economizer, basically this economizer is also the heating coil, a type of heat exchanger. Basically, it is utilized for the enhancing the efficiency of the boiler. You can see here the condensate collected in the condenser, the water which is again pumped to the boiler, it is goes to the economizer. So the purpose of economizer is to heat the uh, boiler feed water before going to the boiler. So it is basically increasing the efficiency of the this boiler, because if we do not install this economizer system in the boiler, so what happens, the the flue gas which contains a lot of heat, that can be discharged through the chimney, so the heat will be wasted. So that is why the purpose of economizer is to enhance the efficiency of the boiler. And that downstream, in the downstream, the air heater. The purpose of air heater is also, it is also a type of heat exchanger. Basically, in the boiler there is two types of air fans are utilized. One is called the primary air fan, and another is called secondary air fan. Here it is shown in the diagram, that is, this is called the primary air fan, and here it is a secondary air fan, that is called FD fan. The purpose of primary air fan is to convey the coal from the mill. Because the coal is fired in the boiler by conveying through the primary air fan. So before conveying this coal, this primary air is heated through the air heater. Basically, the flue gas which is coming from the boiler, it contains the heat. About the temperature of this flue gas in this zone is around 400 to 500 degrees centigrade. So that heat is in the air heater. It is heat exchange takes place. The primary air and secondary air. Secondary air is utilized for the combustion, because for combustion of this air coal, you need this air or oxygen. So for the oxygen in the form of air is pumped through the FD fan. And this is the CFBC boiler. The difference what I have already discussed here, there is no milling system. The fuel is normally fed from the bottom, and here is also a similar concept with their primary air is, that primary air is uh, supplied from the bottom, and there is a nozzle in the here the bottom side. So due to the pressure of this air, the fuel is fluidized in the boiler. That is called that is why this type of technology is called fluidized type boiler. And this is also circulating because part of fuel is unburnt fuel is again circulated through this cyclone. Here it is a system is installed that is called cyclone, which is collecting this unburnt fuel like coal, and the rest of the clean gases is passed through the second pass. Here this is called the second pass, and rest of the things is similar to the liquefied boiler. So this cyclone, the purpose of cyclone is to enhance the combustion technology of the combustion of this fuel. Now we will discuss the we have already we've discussed about the coal thermal power plant, and now this is the power station efficiency and coal consumption. This table, you can see from this table, there is different types of coal grades, and GCB is given, and different uh, for different type of power stations, the heat rate value is given. The plant heat rate basically is called the how much you need uh, energy to generate a unit energy. How much kilocalorie of energy is required for generation of 1 unit of energy? That is called the plant heat rate. So as CA has given some guidelines. CA is a regulatory body of India, government of India, which gives guidelines for thermal power stations. So this is taken from there. You can see for different configuration of power station, the heat rate is given. Like for unit capacity less than 100 megawatt, the station heat rate is 2600. 100 to 200 megawatt, it is again 2600. But 200 to 250, it is 2500. For 250 megawatt and above, it is 2375. And for supercritical thermal power station, it is 2250. So this is the station heat rate. And suppose you have a value of the station heat rate, then you can calculate the what will be the efficiency of that thermal power station. How it is calculated, that I am going to discuss in the next slide. Like power station efficiency and coal consumption. In that table, coal consumption is also given for different grades of the coal. Like this power station efficiency, you can calculate using the station heat rate. Like for example, for a station heat rate of 2500 kilocalorie per kilowatt hour, you can calculate the efficiency by using the above formula. Here it is coming 34.45%. So you can see here, if we are using 100 kilocalorie of energy, so only we are getting 34.45%, like 34.45 kilocalorie, and rest of that is lost. That is in the form of this flue gas heat that is going to discharge to the chimney. There is energy loss, and the major energy which is going to be lost in the thermal power station is the cooling water, which carries a lot of heat when condensate is cooled in the cooling tower, cooling water of the cooling tower. So another thing is that this is the efficiency, and another you can calculate per megawatt coal consumption for an 85% PLF. This is the formula you can calculate by using this formula, the per megawatt annual consumption this is the annual consumption. Like I have considered this G14 coal grade G14 and station heat rate of 2500, and using this formula it is coming around 6714.13 tons. That is the annual per megawatt coal consumption. From this table you can see here what I have calculated for G14, and the station heat rate, what I have GCD of coal is 3015, and the station heat rate is 2500. So the annual coal consumption is given 6174, which is matching, which is almost the same what I have calculated. So this can be used. So if you know the station heat rate, the coal grade, then you can calculate the per megawatt coal consumption. If you are able to calculate the per megawatt coal consumption, then you can calculate the coal consumption for thermal power station. Suppose if you are able to calculate the consumption for 1 megawatt, then you can calculate the coal consumption for the whole station also. Another thing is the steam requirement. Generally, per megawatt, generally a question is asked, what will be the per megawatt steam requirement for a thermal power station. So generally, as a thumb rule, we utilize 4.2 or 4 tons per megawatt, but it varies for depending for station to station, depending on the station heat rate. So, like for example, I have given an example for this 250 megawatt configuration. Suppose the pressure and temperature for that configuration is 150 and 537 degrees centigrade. The enthalpy can be taken from the superheated zone from the steam table. It is coming around 870.75. So using this formula, you can calculate the how much steam is required to generate 1 megawatt of this steam. So it is coming around 3.05. So this steam requirement of steam per megawatt depending on the steam, heat rate of the power station, as well as the operating parameter like pressure and temperature. So if you know the operating pressure and temperature, the steam enthalpy can be taken from the steam table and the station heat rate, then you can calculate very easily the steam requirement per uh, megawatt. This is the another thing. Like we have discussed about the coal consumption and the steam requirement. Now this is the PSP water consumption. Basically, the MOEF in on December 2015 given a guideline for the water consumption in thermal power stations. Like the older power stations, which old power station means which are commissioned before December 2016, that should consume the water 3.5 meter cube per hour per megawatt. If the power station is consuming more, then they have to comply this norm. Otherwise, their power station will be phased out or given notice to shut down. And for new thermal power station, power plant, it is the 2.5 meter cube per hour per megawatt. This is the guideline, and you have to comply with. Now, the pollution control technology. Basically, in thermal power stations, what we have already discussed in, there is a electrostatic control, the pollution control technology, electrostatic precipitator, baghouse. This is installed for the controlling the SPM, like dust particles in the flue gas. And this basically electrostatic precipitator technology is work based on the capacitor, you make the capacitor, and there is a basically there is two types of electrodes. One is the collecting electrode, and another is the this called the emitting electrode. So high voltage is applied in the electrostatic precipitator. Then when the this flue gas is passed to the electrostatic precipitator in the ESP, when it is passed through the ESP, gas is passed due to high voltage, the gas is ionized, and due to the high electric field, this dust particle ionized and it is collected on the collecting electrode, and the clean gas is passed through the downstream of the ESP. And another is technology is basically when the fuel combustion takes place, the NOx, basically the nitrogen present in the fuel as well as nitrogen is also present in the air. So that nitrogen present in the air is oxidized in the form of NOx, which is harmful for the health. So that cannot be let out in the environment directly. So for that, there is also a norm to limit the NOx value. That we will discuss later on what are the limits. But to adhere that norm for NOx, there is two type of technology. One is called SNCR and other is called SCR. SNCR is selective non-catalytic reduction. This is generally installed in the boiler in a particular, and this system works in a particular temperature zone, like ranging from 900 to 1050 degrees centigrade. This is called the temperature zone. Basically, this operates in that particular temperature zone, and in that particular temperature zone only the reagent, that is reagent is used in this technology is ammonia or urea. So that ammonia and urea react in that particular temperature zone only with the NOx. That is why it is called selective. And non-catalytic means here we are not using any catalyst. That is why it is called not catalytic. So in this by this method, we are reducing this NOx concentration in the flue gas by reducing this NOx. When this ammonia is injected in the boiler, it reacts with the NOx and the NOx is reduced in the nitrogen. So we can reduce the NOx in the flue gas. Another technology is SCR, selective catalytic reduction. Here we are using the catalyst, and that catalyst is normally tungsten, vanadium pentoxide, tungsten. This type of catalyst is used. The purpose of this catalyst is to reduce the temperature zone. Like in SNCR, the temperature window, a temperature zone is in the range of 900 to 1000 degrees centigrade. But in FCR, the temperature zone is around 370, 350 to 400 degrees centigrade. So this system can be installed outside the boiler, and that is in between it is normally installed in between the eco zone and air heater, what I have discussed earlier in the second part boiler. And this is also for the NOx control. Another, this technology is flue gas desulfurization technology, which we will discuss in detail. This is for SOx control, that is SO2. Basically, so this is the new MOEF and CC norm that is notified on 7 December 2015 by MOEF. This is MOEF means Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. So this is the norm for SO2. Earlier, before this norm is December 2015, there is no limit for the SO2. But after that, this is the norm enforced by MOEF for different units configuration. These are the limits. The units which are installed before 2003, December 2003, it is 600, and for unit capacity more than 500, it is 200. Similarly, for the units which are commissioned after January 2004 and in between the December 2016, it is similar, same, but the units which are installed after January 2017, it is 100 for all type of units. Uh, Similarly, this is the NOx limit and FPM and mercury level also. Here today we are going to discuss about the SO2. So this is the why need of FGD installation. So combustion of fuel like coal having sulfur results in SO2 emission, because when sulfur is burnt, it is converted into the SO2, and 95 to 96% of sulfur is converted into SO2. And in Indian coal, normally the sulfur is in the range of 0.25 to 0.5% average, and in imported coal it is more than 0.6%. But in the lignite, it is ranges from 0.6 to 1.5%. Coal with 0.5% sulfur generates SO2 in the range of 1500 to 2000 milligrams per NM3. So uh, we have in the earlier slide we have discussed that this limit was for the unit capacity less than 500 megawatt. It was 600, and normally 0.5% sulfur. The SO2 is in the range of 1500 to 2000 milligrams per NM3. So if the sulfur is in the range of 0.525, also the SO2 will be in the range of 800 or 1000 milligrams per NM3. So for complying this MOEF and CC norm, we have to install this GD technology. Till now, any question is there? Hello? Hello?
Hello. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Any question is there?
I'll ask, sir. Guys, if you have any question, you are free to ask. I have unmuted you all.
Hello? Shall I move ahead?
Yes, sir. Please move ahead. I don't think, sir, there's any question.
Okay. And this SO2 is also causes the acid rain, corrosion of buildings and structures, and affect the human health also. That's why the to for the safety point of view and for complying the MOEF and CC norms, we have to install this FGD technology. This is the unit-wise breakup of the installed capacity of thermal power plants in India. I'm not going to discuss this thing. This is just values unit capacity, and this is the also the status of FGD installation as on July 2020. Actually, this norms was comes into force on December 2015. After that, people our owner are going to install this FGD to comply with that norm. So the CEA is the body, that is the Central Electricity Authority is the body which uh, follow up with the various owners. What is the status? So this is the current in July 2020, the current status of the installation of FGD system in the various thermal power station sector wise, and yeah, sector wise like the central What is the status of central and what is the status of state sector and the private sector. In the table 2, the same thing is on the based on the number of units, and on the table 1 is based on the number of sorry, in the based on the capacity of power stations. Now the types of FGD technology. This is in thermal power station right now in all over the India. This FGD technology is the technology which is going to be installing all over the thermal power station of the India. So currently this is very hot topic in the market. This FGD technology basically classified in three categories. That is one is the wet FGD, another is the dry FGD, and third one is the semi-dry FGD. Wet FGD, basically these are the classification is based on the wet mode of the reaction. Basically these are the chemical reactions between the SO2 and the reagent. So what type of reagent and in what medium that reaction takes place, based on that this classification is done. Like in wet FGD, this the reaction takes place in wet mode. In dry, it is in the form of dry mode, and the semi-dry in this is in between the dry and wet. The wet FGD is further classified in three categories. One is wetland based FGD, another is ammonia based FGD, third one is seawater FGD. Based on the type of reagent, dry FGD is further classified based on the location of injection. Suppose this reagent or sorbent, what we may call. So if it is injected in the furnace, then it is called furnace injection. And if we inject in the duct, then it is called duct injection. This semi-dry FGD is basically further classified SDA and CDS. CDS circulating dry scrubber technology, and the SDA is suspension dry absorber technology. The worldwide population of FGD systems. This is the population of FGD system. Can be seen that wet FGD is have a population of 86%, that is the most, and the 12% of semi-dry, and dry FGD is very less. And this right side it is the based on the reagent. So as the most popular is wetland based FGD system. So we will first of all discuss the wetland based FGD technology. This is the typical scheme of a wetland based FGD technology. Here in this system, the wet lime basically is utilized for the scrubbing system. So wet lime is in the market is available in the lump size, but for the reaction it is required at a certain size, like for in the, basically it is sprayed in the slurry form. So for that slurry, the size of limestone is less than 44 micron size is recommended. For that reason, the wet ball mill is installed. The limestone from here is fed to the wet ball mill, and here in the wet ball mill, the slurry is prepared, and this slurry is fed to the absorber. Basically, this is the system before FGD. The flue gas is passed through the stack after the ESP, but to comply this SO2 norm, this FGD system is installed between this. So the gas is tapped from here and passed through the absorber. This is called the absorber, where the reaction takes place, and from the absorber, the treated gas is again discharged to the chimney. So the flue gas for the treatment, this limestone is in the slurry form. It is recirculated from here, in the absorber, and flue gas is passed from the bottom side, and this slurry is taken on the top, so reaction takes place. And this is the oxidation blower. The purpose of this oxidation blower is to oxidize the uh, this calcium. Basically, in the when the limestone is calcium carbonate, it reacts with the calcium sulfur dioxide form calcium sulfide. So calcium sulfide is further oxidized to calcium sulfate, which is a gypsum and which is a soluble product. So that's why formation of enhancing the formation of gypsum, this oxidation blower is used. So this is the typical scheme of FGD system. This is the absorber chemistry, what I have discussed. SO2, which is coming in the flue gas, is absorbed in the flue gas by the slurry, and finally in the last reaction it can be seen that this is the gypsum formation takes place. So SO2 is absorbed and gypsum is formation takes place in the absorber. This is the sulfide equilibrium curve. I am not going to discuss in detail. Basically, the absorber, in the absorber there is a limitation of pH. You have to operate this slurry, recirculated slurry in a particular pH range. That pH range is basically 5.5 to 6 for wasteland-based RGD system. It can be explained from this curve also. Like this reaction is very important, and all these reactions are reversible reactions. So, this reaction here, it can be seen that when the sulfate ion is formation takes place, here the H plus ion concentration is there. So here, if we are decreasing the pH, it can be seen here the bisulfite is maximum at the range of 4.5 pH. So, but in the range, if we are decreasing the pH range, the H plus ion concentration in the solution is increases. Here the first reaction is, it can be seen that if H plus ion concentration in the solution will increase, then this equilibrium is goes in the backward direction, means the SO2 absorption will decrease if we are decreasing the pH. That's why the pH is maintained beyond 5.5 limit, and it is advisable that do not operate the system below the 5.5 pH, because for this reaction the equilibrium constant is nearby the pH range of 5.5 limit. This is the different type of water system for this FGD system, like process water. For this process water is used for the making the slurry, limestone slurry, and the auxiliary cooling water for cooling. DM water, there is two types of circuits. I'm not going to explain this in detail. And this is clarified water. That is the comparatively better water. That is clarified water is used for the washing of gypsum. We will see it in the next coming slide. Service water is used for the cleaning and washing purpose. This is the limestone handling and storage system. What we have already discussed in the previous slide, that limestone is used for the scrubbing system. So limestone basically in the plant is stored in a store yard, and from there it is unloaded from the in the hopper, and from the hopper to the conveyor belt it is fed to the crusher. Basically, what I told that limestone found in the lump size like 250 mm, and the grinding mill, the limitation of grinding mill is that it will not allow to use the limestone beyond the size of 20 beyond 20 mm size. So for that reason, we have to install a crusher also. From the crusher, it is crushed to a size of 20 mm size. From there, it is fed to the day bean silo, and from this day bean silo, it is further fed to the ball mill, where it is grinding takes place and the slurry formation takes place, and that slurry is again sent to the absorber. This is the limestone milling system. From the day bean silo, this is the fed to the wave feeder, and from the wave feeder, it is goes to the ball mill. Here, grinding takes place, and the slurry formation. For slurry making, water is also injected from this. This is the water, and this is the system that is called a classifier or hydrocyclone. The purpose of this hydrocyclone is to pass only the desired particle size like 44 micron size, and above that size, it is again circulated in the ball mill, and this is stored in a storage land slurry storage tank. From the slurry storage tank is on to the absorber for reaction. And the gypsum, which is the gypsum formation takes in the absorber, and that is pumped to the dewatering system. That there is a two-stage gypsum dewatering system, that is primary dewatering and first stage, and this is the second stage. First stage, this is the primary hydrocyclone, and this is the vacuum belt filter, that is called the second stage. Normally, the gypsum is bleed off from the absorber in the range of 20 to 15 to 20% solid concentration, depending on the manufacturer also. So 15% solid is bleed off, and it is fed to the hydrocyclone, and from this hydrocyclone, uh, it is dewatered. So the concentration of which is going to the belt filter, the concentration is increases up to 45 to 50%, and after this vacuum belt filter, the concentration of gypsum is more than 90%, and the purity, this moisture content in the final gypsum product is less than 10%. So that gypsum is again it is conveyed to a gypsum storage. From there, that can be fed to the that can be transported to the whatever be the agency is involved for taking of the gypsum. And now that overflow of this primary hydrocyclone is goes to the secondary hydrocyclone, and from the secondary hydrocyclone is finally goes to the wastewater tank. That is that wastewater contains the heavy metals and other impurities, and that is further neutralized. And after neutralization, it can be formed to the ash pond. And nowadays, in many of the plants also, the concept of ZLD is also there. That is zero liquid discharge. You cannot waste water. So for that, in those of the plants where ZLD is installed, this water can be pumped to the ZLD, where this impurities and salt and heavy metals can be extracted by ZLD, and the pure water is further taken into the main circuit of this LGD system. And finally, this water which is coming from this hydrocyclone, it is collected and from the vacuum belt filter also. The water which we are collected into the filtrate water tank. From the filtrate water tank, that is again it is recycled for the slurry making and for the absorber makeup also. So this water is again reused in the our circuit. Basically, for an FGD system, per megawatt normally 0.25 to 0.30 meter cube uh, per mega meter cube per hour per megawatt water is basically needed. Now, what are the issues and challenges with this FGD technology like wetland-based FGD? Because wetland-based FGD system is the most popular because of the fact that limestone is available and it is cheaper. But the question is, for India, there is 1.70 lakhs megawatt capacity. Suppose we are going to install for all these power stations the limestone-based FGD system. So 20 million tons per annum the limestone is required, which produce 30 million tons of this gypsum per annum, which is a very huge quantity. And the purity of gypsum is also linked with the quality of limestone. The good quality of limestone is only available in some few areas like Rajasthan. So the quality and utilization of this use amount of gypsum is also a measure of concern. And like this gypsum is basically utilized in the cement industries, then maybe in the fertilizer industries and in agriculture industries also. But we have to explore these things also, whether this much of amount of gypsum is produced, then whether it can be total meet the quality of this cement industries or fertilizer industry or not. If does it doesn't it meet, then we have to dispose of. And the dispose of the environment friendly disposal is also a measure of concern. Then availability of space in existing power station is also a measure of concern. Like for this system, what we have already discussed.
একটা জিনিস কাজ করছে না
Hello,
একটা জিনিস কাজ করছে না
hello, hello, hello.
Hello, sir.
Someone is.
Yes, sir. That was Joydeep, sir.
Is there
Hello,
any question?
Joydeep, sir.
Hello.
Not me.
No,
not
sir.
me. It was not me.
Okay, okay. Sorry, sir. Sir, please go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's why there is another technology that is called the ammonia-based FGD technology. Like this is also a wet FGD technology. Like in wet type wet limestone based FGD system, there is wet limestone is used as a reagent. Here ammonia is used. This is the similar technology. The difference is only here ammonia is used. Ammonia handling is also an issue because of the hazardous in nature. But the advantage is that if you compare both the things, like limestone process 1.56 for 1 ton of SO2 removal, 1.6 tons limestone is required. Here, 0.5 tons of ammonia is required, and it gives 1.9 tons of ammonium sulfate. And here it gives 2.7 tons of gypsum and 0.7 tons of CO2, which is a CO2 is also not good for the environment. That is why, but in case of ammonia-based FGD, there is no CO2 emission. And ammonium sulfate is also a fertilizer. So this is the advantage of ammonia-based FGD technology over the wetland-based FGD technology. But the disadvantage of that technology is that this is a newer technology, and there is the limited vendors, only one or two worldwide, and one is in China, another is in Vietnam only. So, and the handling of ammonia is also an issue. So right now in India, no client is right now going for ammonia-based LPG technology. Uh, Another one is seawater-based LPG technology. Seawater-based LPG technology is the technology. Basically, this can be the limitation of this technology is that this can be applied only where power stations which are in the coastal areas. Normally in coastal areas, the thermal power station they are using seawater as a cooling for condenser. So after the condenser cooling, that water is again pumped to the seawater. So we are not taking any extra water for this GD. Only the downstream water which is going to the seawater is taken from there, and it is stored in a sump, and from there, from the sump it is pumped to the absorber system, and their reaction takes place, and after the reaction that slurry is again collected into a aeration basin, uh, and this purpose of this aeration basin is to remove the sorry, to enhance the formation of calcium sulfate, which is good for the sea plants and aquatic life also. So the and another thing is that to because after this reaction the pH level of this slurry is also goes down in the range of 2 to 3. So to make up the pH in the range of 6.5, because lower pH you discharge the into the seawater, the environment the control pollution control board will not allow. So that is why a fresh water is also tapped here to make that pH in the range of 6.5. So in this technology, the specialty of this technology is that we are not using any type of reagent. Only the seawater, which is, and that seawater is also is utilized in the power station. We are just diverting that, and after this making the reactions, and again it is discharged to the seawater. So normally for 1 ton of removal of SO2, 12,000 to 13,000 meter cube per hour of seawater is required, and this is also depends on the quality of seawater. These are the some of the attributes. What I think most of the things I have already discussed. Another, this is the technology, semi-dry LPG technology. In this technology, basically we are using two types of reagents, that quicklime or hydrated lime can be used. If we are using quicklime for this technology, then we have to install a hydrator. Otherwise, if you are using hydrated lime, then it can be directly hydrated lime in powder form. So dry hydration, this system is not required. From this hydrated lime, it is pumped to the absorber system, and the flue gas which is coming from the boiler is passed from here, and here is the can be seen here, this is a very conical shape. So due to that, the when flue gas passes through this, the due to that Venturi action, this lime, what we are feeding here, it is fluidized in the absorber. That is why this is called, this technology is called the circulating fluidized type of technology. And water is also injected here, because this type of technology, the reaction is more efficient in the range of adiabatic saturation temperature range, and that adiabatic temperature range is like 75 to 80 degrees centigrade. So after the reaction takes place, the flue gas is passed through the this fabric filter, and from this fabric filter, most of the normally 90% this dust that is recirculated again. That is why it is called recirculating, and the this byproduct generated is collected in a silo, and from this silo it is again collected in the main silo. And the clean flue gas is passed through the stack. So this is the basic technology of semi-dry. And what is the difference between wet and semi-dry? Like in wet, the reaction is taking in wet media, so the absorber zone and the flue gas downstream zone is in acidic mode. So the downstream system of wet FGD system is need to be protected from the acid corrosion media. For that, the whole stack is to be lined or wet stack, that is called wet stack, or there is system that is GGS is installed. I'm forget to discuss about that. Basically, the purpose of GGS is to enhance the downstream temperature of the flue gas to avoid the this installation of anti-corrosive material. But in case of this semi-dry FGD, the pH range is above the 7, and it is operates in the alkaline media. That is why there is no need to uh, lining of the downstream system, and also the existing chimney that can be used as it is. But in case of wet FGD, you have to line the existing chimney, or a new chimney has to be installed. This is the difference. This is the semi-dry FGD. This is another type of technology where that is in that technology we are injecting this lime in the form of powder form, but here it is fed in the form of slurry. It is also similar, but something difference is only here. This is a cyclone is installed for circulating purpose. Where in that technology, that is fabric filter, from there it is circulated, but here the cyclone is there, and more rest of the things are similar to that of the technology. And now this is the dry FGD technology. Dry FGD technology is basically the reaction takes place in dry mode, as we have in India, we are going to install in most of the existing power stations, and this technology is can be installed in boiler or in duct, but in the existing boiler, it is not recommended to install because it affects the boiler efficiency and also. So it is recommended to install in between the economizer and aerator, or it can be installed in between the ESP and aerator. That's basically its reactivity. The reagent which is used for this, that is either sodium bicarbonate or prona. Prona is a natural reagent which is normally found on the seashore, but in India it is not available in Indian seashore. So for this technology, SBC, that is sodium bicarbonate, can be used. The reactivity of this reagent is basically in the range of normally 140, 131, above 130, 40 degree temperature to 450 degree centigrade. So it is up to the manufacturer supplier whether this can be installed in between this temperature zone or here. And the specialty of this technology is that very less system is there. It can be seen, and very less system is there, and its cost, initial cost is also very less, and the installation time is very less, and the required space is also very less. But the disadvantage is that the cost of operating cost is very high due to the high reagent cost that we will discuss in the later. So these are the dry agility technology, some of the features. But I think we have discussed most of the points. One more thing is that quality of ash deteriorates, resulting cement manufacturer may not accept the ash due to the increasing alkalinity of fly ash. Because of that, because we are injecting this reagent between the ESP, so the characteristic of ash will change. So what will be the new characteristic that will be that can be checked after the installation of this, whether that characteristic will be suited to the requirement, meet the requirement of this cement manufacturer or not. If suppose it will not meet, then entire ash what we are selling, that may not be acceptable to them, then we will be to have to dispose of. So this is the disadvantage of this technology. Another disadvantage of this technology is that removal efficiency. The SO2 removal efficiency is very less. That is 50% only as compared to other technologies like wetland based ability system that they claim in the removal efficiency more than 99%. So it is only recommended for the boilers which where the space is very space constraint is there, and you have to know time for and know space, and the plant is very old. You have to run only 4 to 5 years, and you have to comply the MOEF norms, and the removal efficiency is only 30-40%. Then you may go for this type of technology. This is the comparison of all type of the this technology. Like if you compare this cost wise, capital cost of limestone based WD is highest X. So ammonia based is 0.9x and seawater is 0.8 to 0.9x. Semi-dry is 0.7x and 0.4x dry FGD system. Like currently, as per the CA guidelines for this limestone based WD technology, the capex is around 50 to 60 lakhs per megawatt for a thermal power station. So accordingly, if you calculate this for a 200 megawatt, suppose the price is X, so accordingly ammonia based other technology, that price can be estimated. The absorbent this absorbent or reagent, that is limestone, ammonia, seawater, quicklime, what I already we have discussed. The cost of reagent here limestone is low, like say it is ranging from 2000 to 3000 per ton, but ammonia is high. Ammonia is around anhydrous ammonia cost is around 20,000 per ton. In the seawater we are not utilizing any reagent. In semi-dry, if we are utilizing hydrated lime and quicklime, the cost is around 6,000 to 7,000 per ton. And the dry FGD, sir, suppose we are using FBC, then its cost is 25,000 to 30,000 per ton. So the reagent cost is very high as compared to other technologies. And product, if you compare this for limestone, it is the gypsum is soluble, ammonium sulfate is also soluble. This soluble nature of this end product compensates some of the your capex. And here it is there is no end product. Semi-dry FGD, the end product is not soluble; it is disposable in nature, and the dry FGD is also. The waste generation. And the most important thing is the SO2 removal efficiency. For this weight FGD, if you see the most of the almost all the weight technology claims the removal efficiency more than 99%. and the semi-dry it is 95%, and for dry FGD up to 80% can be achieved, but it is not techno-economically feasible. And the SO3 removal efficiency it is 40 to 50 for this wet FGD, and dry FGD more than 99% can be achieved. The power consumption and the water consumption and the execution time. So based on this comparison, you can see there is a all of this technology has some advantages, some disadvantage over another technology. So whether for any of these power station, which technology is best technology? We suppose for a power station, we are going for whether we are going for limestone or ammonia based or seawater or semi drain. Which technology is best suited? Only based on capex we cannot select, and because one of the this capex is high, then operating cost is low. So we have to carry out the life cycle cost benefit analysis to select whichever be the best stable technology. This is the recommendation by CA also uh, to select technology for a power station, whether you have to carry out the life cycle cost benefit analysis. So this is the last slide. I think this completed. Okay, thank you, sir. Hello.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I would request guys to please, if you have some doubt, you are free to ask here.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir. So, Alok, are there any queries in the chat box? We can take them one by one if there are.
Okay.
There is
Hello?
a query from Uddesh, but he's not here right now.
Oh, okay.
Actually, he messaged me that he's having some internet issue and he left.
Okay.
And his query was that can you please explain the limestone once again?
Limestone means what? Limestone is basically it is a reagent which is used in wetland based FGD technology, wet limestone based FGD technology. And in India, limestone is abundantly available, but the issue is that the quality, like in limestone, this calcium carbonate, purity of how much calcium carbonate is available. Suppose if 89%, 90% purity of limestone is available, then our gypsum quality, which is a soluble product, so our gypsum quality is better. If gypsum quality is better, then it can be sold out in the market, and it will be saleable in the market. So our we can generate a revenue from this after selling this gypsum, which will help to reduce some our operating cost and also compensate the capital cost also. So the limestone is basically cheaper. What I have already discussed, different type of reagents and their cost also. So if you compare the cost of reagent in with respect to other technology reagent like ammonia, like quicklime or hydrocell lime, like SDC, the limestone is very cheaper, and the uh, gypsum is also saleable. That's why this limestone based FGD technology is most popular worldwide, and we have already discussed that more than 86%, 86% is based on wetland based FGD technology only. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
But whether that student is not available, what he wants to hello.
Yes, sir.
Uh, what is his query? I am unable to understand. But this limestone is basically the purpose of limestone. I have already explained. So anything else you require, or I think it is clarified.
It's clarified, sir. It's clarified.
Okay, any more?
Sir, I would request if there is any more doubt, please come up and ask here.
By the
Hello.
time, yes, sir. By the time any student comes up with his doubt, I would request Joydeep sir to please thank Kamlesh sir to give us his time today and give us this great session, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Joydeep sir, if you are there.
Yes, it was a very enriching session from Kamlesh sir, and thank you for deriving your precious time to be present on this event and being the faculty in charge of the UM Kolkata chapter. From wholeheartedly, I wish to congratulate you for the entire session, for the enriching session, and hope the students has got the gist from the thermal power plant experience, your vast experience. And again, I would like to thank you, ISRI Kolkata, for arranging this technical webinar on the occasion of ISRI Students Day. So that's it up. I would like to close here.
And
Okay. Thank you, sir.
and
And I would like, hello.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would like to thank also to ISREC Kolkata chapter to give an opportunity to me to share my knowledge. And if such type of session in future also if required, you can contact me. Yes, thank you. Thanks again, sir.
Definitely, sir. We look forward to having more sessions from you for UEM as well and as
Basically,
well.
this actually this FGD technology and thermal power station technology is also a very vast subject.
Yes,
In detail, it is not possible to discuss many things in a 1 hour or 2 hours.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Sure, sir. We look forward to having more sessions from you, and probably we will take smaller sections of this topic so that you are able to cover those topics with greater depth. And I'm sure
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like suppose we are going to discuss boiler. Boiler is also a very vast subject. Turbine is also a vast subject.
Yes,
So I have try to actually for a student I have tried to just give an idea what are the systems are there in thermal power station and then pollution control technology. What are the I have just touched other technology also like this electrostatic classification that is there for the STM technology and this NOx. I have not discussed detail, but this soft NOx technology is also current ongoing technology for this to meet the new MOU of norm.
yes, sir. Thank you very much for your time today, and we we are we I enjoyed this session personally very much, and I'm sure the current fourth years listening to you must have understood what they have to do to get into the thermal power plant. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And
Sir,
next,
I would like to say something that, sir, I'm a fourth year student and being the student president of UEM Kolkata, sir, that was a very enlightening presentation with all the overview on such a vast topic of thermal power plant and FGD technologies with all calculations and all. And sir, you added a lot on the first student day of UEM Kolkata on an online platform. So thank you so much for that, sir. And we look forward to uh, get a detailed explanation on such vast topics. Thank you, sir.
Okay, okay. And if any student or any of you, if you have any Facebook queries, then you can also mail to me. I can reply in the mail also.
sure, sir.
Sure, sir. Sure, sure.
I have
Okay.
your mail ID and
My,
yes,
I think my mail is available with Gaurav.
yes, sir. I have your mail ID and I will share it with the students so that they are able to share their queries to you over mail as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, sir. And next in this session, we actually, Kamlesh sir, I would like to inform you that UEM had also organized a photography contest for their chapter, and they received a lot many entries for that, and they are giving the awards to the top three winners, I suppose. So, Jaideep sir, Alok, if you are ready, we can announce the awards.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
would request Joydeep sir. Yes, sir. Please
No,
announce.
yes, Gaurav from ISRE Kolkata, I sent it to Orko. Now, if on behalf of the ISRE Kolkata chapter, I would like to, Gaurav to announce it officially in this forum.
Thank you, sir. And Orko Bhaiya wanted to join, but because of his commitments, he was not able to. But he has sent
Yes,
me the list of winners.
yes,
So,
yes, yes, yes.
thank you for providing me this opportunity. So, the third prize, I hope the winners are here. So, the third prize goes to Krishanu Haldar of Mechanical fourth year. So, congratulations, Krishanu, if you are there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very well,
Thank you, history chapter.
very well
Thank you,
done.
everyone.
And
Thank you,
we
sir.
we look forward to giving you your award as soon as possible. Second, for the second prize, we have Abhishek Chakravarti of Mechanical third year. So, congratulations, Abhishek, if you are there. And the winner. So, I believe he had the best submission. So, Orkyo Gupta of Mechanical fourth year. He is the winner of the photography contest of UEM chapter. So, congratulations, Orkyo. I look forward to seeing all these entries of the students whenever Alok shares those photos with me.
Yes, yes, yes. Of course, I will send it to Alok with the rank. And I must say one thing that some of the photographs were really, really amazing. That our external judges even they were confused which photograph to be selected, and they have given me actually top five ranks. So as per the norms of ISRE, we can only select three, but all of them are superb. Fine. They were a bit confused on which to select because all the entries were fantastic.
Sir, if since you have mentioned it, uh, the other two, like you mentioned, they
Fourth,
gave you the first
yes, yes,
five. So, if
yes,
you want, you could provide the rest of the two motivational award, and I'm sure ISRE Kolkata would
okay, okay,
consider that as well.
fantastic. I have top five photographs. Yes, so I will send it via Alok.
Yes, sir. And I would request you, if you have this FB page of your chapter, you could post those photos on the FB
Of
page
course, of course, of course, of course.
so
Alok,
that
you will take care of this. I will send you with the rank.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
So because Alok maintains our FB page, and we regularly post there about our activities. So Alok is the key person to this. So he will post it.
yes, sir. So that's it. And next, I hope you guys know that IJJ has been announced for this year. So all the fourth year guys, you need to take the membership before 30th of September, and only after that you will be eligible to apply for ISRE Job Junction. So Kolkata will be hosting this ISRE Job Junction this year. So Alok, I would request you to convey this message to all the current fourth years, be it the double E, triple E, or mechanical, that if they wish to apply for ISRE Job Junction, they need to take the membership before this month ends. And along with that, the competition, RefCold competition 2 has been announced. So students can participate in the poster design competition of RefCold, and that's another big platform of ISRE. So do make sure that we see submission from UEM chapter in that as well. We had submission from UEM chapter in NSDC and ISPG, so we were glad to have that. And so Pritam and Abhishek, we look forward to your team to making the submission for poster presentation contest as well. And I believe that was it. And also the students, we like the main event of ISRE, we will be having a quest as well in the coming days. So I hope third and fourth year guys and and second years also have already started to prepare. So you have the sister job junction, this ref fold, and this request in the coming days, and we will be having the results for SRPG and NSDC in a few days. So there are many events lined up. So utilize this membership as much as you can. So thank you everyone for turning up today. And Jagdeep sir, if you would allow, we could conclude this session for
Of course, Gaurav. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your presence. And it was very, very wonderfully coordinated by you. I also want to thank you personally for coordinating the event. And also Kamlesh sir for being present on the eve of East Day Students Day. Thank you. Thank you, Alok also.
now. Yes, thank you everyone. And belated Happy Teachers Day to Jagdeep sir and Kamlesh sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again.
Thank you. So see you. Stay safe. Good night.
So, good night
Good,
to all
good
of you.
everyone.
Be safe.
Bye. Bye bye everyone.